Welcome to the Virginia DECA State Leadership Conference Judge Orientation for Role Play Judges. As a judge, you will have the opportunity to sit front row and evaluate Virginia's most talented members in our organization. Your real-world expertise is greatly appreciated and valued as an integral part of our competitive events program. DECA is preparing emerging leaders and entrepreneurs in many fields: marketing, finance, hospitality, and management, in high schools and colleges around the world. Our competitive events program allows our students to connect what they're learning in their marketing courses to real-world marketing practices. Our competitive events program allows the students to integrate that classroom instruction, apply what they're learning, connect to businesses, and promote competition. As we complete our mission discussed on the previous slide, DECA will be preparing the next generation to be academically prepared, community-oriented, professionally responsible, and experienced leaders. At our State Leadership Conference, approximately 4,000 marketing students from across Virginia will be competing in events with the ultimate goal of making it to our Career Development Conference in Orlando, Florida. Today I have 3 goals for this orientation: to provide you with an overview of your responsibilities, to help in understanding the makeup of the role play events, and preview what will happen on the day of SLC as you judge our students. Let's begin by looking at what a role play event is, what the role play event is made up of, and how that process will look. Students will be competing either as an individual or in a team of 2, depending on what event they're in. Students are recognized for achievement in all components of the event. The event may be comprised of both a written test and either 1 or 2 role-play scenarios, depending on the event. Students are not given the scenarios prior to competition day. They are given the scenario and time to prepare immediately prior to being brought to you for judging. Let's take a minute and look at the different role-play events that we have and what makes them different depending on which event you are assigned to work in. Our principals events are students who are first-year DECA members, and they compete as an individual. That event is comprised of 1 role play and their written test. In our individual series events, students compete again as individuals, but this time they have 2 role plays and a written test. These tend to be our more experienced competitors. In our team decision-making events, you would be seeing a team of 2 students. Their events are comprised of 1 case study and a written test. You will be completing 1 role play with competitors. The time that you see each student will vary depending on the event you're assigned. Individual series and principals events, you'll be seeing the students for 10 minutes. And in team decision-making events, those are the ones with 2 students. You'll have 15 minutes with that team. The score that you give the students counts 1/3 of their total score in the event. Our overall winners are the students who have the highest score across all 3 components of their event. Let's look at what your day will be like when you arrive at our conference on March the 2nd. When you arrive, you will check in the lobby of the convention center, receive a welcome packet, and be introduced to the individuals who are going to be running your event. We will have some breakfast items and coffee available for you, and your event director will give you some event-specific training on the scenario that you will be judging. Lunch will be provided during your shift. We would like to ask that all phones be turned off, particularly while you are seeing students. During breaks, it would be very appropriate to check phones if necessary. What we don't want to have happen is a phone ring or a conversation during a student presentation. That would be very disruptive and upsetting to the students who are presenting to you. A lot of people ask about dress for the day. We do ask that judges abide by the dress code at their place of employment. Generally, that's business professional or business casual. Our students will be dressed in professional attire, including a jacket. Next, I'd like to take a minute and look at what exactly makes up a role play. What are the components of it, and what you can expect to see, and what the students will be seeing. Here's what the students will be seeing when they arrive to begin their preparation time before seeing you. All of our events are formatted the same, just the content is altered for each different category. First, they'll have some general instructions, followed by 2 categories that they will need to be paying particular attention to: 21st century skills and the performance indicators. Both of these items are on the evaluation sheet and are what you will be evaluating the students on. The 21st century skills are some general categories and how they communicate and solve problems and think critically. The performance indicators are the content that they need to include as they solve the event situation. The last thing that they're given is the actual event situation. It details their role, your role as the judge, and some details about the business or the scenario that they need to address. Here's what your instructions will look like. The first thing you see is the judge role play characterization. Just like the student instructions, it will detail your role and the student's role and the details about the company or the situation that's being addressed. The set of details that you see are exactly the same as the students. They're just written for your role during the interaction. At the end of the role play situation, the judge's instructions will include some general information about how you should conduct the role play with the students. It might have some suggested questions that you can use, and it might give you some indication about how you should begin and end the role play with the students. This is an example of what the evaluation rubrics are going to look like. The first thing listed is the performance indicators, followed by the 21st century skills. Again, these are the items that were listed in the student instructions that they were going to be evaluated on. You'll be judging each item independently. For example, you'll be looking at item number 1, explain the nature and scope of the selling function. You'll be rating that item between the values of 1 to 14. The rubric lists a 0, but the actuality is our bubble sheet does not allow for a 0 score, and we'll be looking at that bubble sheet in just a moment. So you'll score each item within the ranges given. All right, here's the bubble sheet that I was just referring to. When you see the bubble sheets for the students that you'll be seeing, the student name in the event will actually be pre-printed in the blue box at the top of the form. All you need to do on this form is record the numeric score for each item in the box following that line item. For example, item number 1 on the example we just looked at had a score range of 1 to 14. So you would simply write in 14 in the large box to the right of the bubbles. You do not need to do any bubbling. Our adult assistants will take care of that. All you need to do is write the score that you wish to give beside each line item. All right, next thing I'd like to talk about is actually judging the role play, a little bit of the nuts and bolts as far as how to actually go about judging each of our student groups. When you arrive on site on March the 2nd, you'll be given the role play scenario that you will be judging. We do not release these prior to competition day to help maintain the integrity of our events. The first thing you'll want to do is read the judge's instructions as thoroughly as you can and review the scoring rubric. If you have any questions about the specific event that you've been given, it would be important to ask those questions before you begin seeing students. All of our adult assistants who are running your events are our marketing teachers and will be very able to answer any of the questions that you might have. Okay, a couple of general guidelines as you evaluate role plays during the day. As students come to you, one of the first things you'll want to do is verify that the student you are listening to matches the evaluation sheet that you have in front of them. Simply make sure that their name matches the name on your bubble sheet. You're going to see each student for 10 minutes in the individual and principals events and for 15 minutes in the team events. This includes the time that you have to ask questions. At 1 minute left for each student, an adult assistant will walk behind the student and signal you that they have 1 minute left. At the time limit, students and judges will be cut off from continuing, even if you are in the middle of asking questions. The timing of all presentations is critical to making the event consistent for each student and team of students and to help keep our event running on time during the day. As the students present to you and go through their role play, it'll be important that you try not to interrupt their presentation, but at the same time interact with them as they are asking you to. It would be important to hold your questions until the end, let them get their thoughts out, and go through the role play the way that they have planned to do so. Any required questions that are in your scenario, you want to make sure that you ask to every student that you see. Consistency is the key thing here. We want all students that you see to have the same experience. If you make an error in your role play or you do something with the first group of students that you see, please do that same thing throughout the day with the students. Again, consistency, we want the first group to have the same experience with you as the last group that you see. Let's take a look at the scoring of the role play. One thing we will ask is that you not give any perfect scores. Perfect scores are difficult for us when we get to tabulation and we're putting all three components of the student's event together. It's very difficult to break ties if students have hundreds. So we'll ask you to refrain from giving 100s. You're going to score each item on the rubric according to how well that student covered that topic. Each line item is evaluated independently of the others. Make sure that every line on the evaluation Scantron has a number score beside it. And you're going to want to use the master Scantron to determine the maximum score available for each line item. For example, in the one we looked at earlier, the maximum score was a 14 for item number 1. You had places to bubble up to 20, but that item had a maximum score of 14. So you'll want to make sure that your score is no higher than 14 on that item. You do not need to bubble any scores. Our adult assistants will take care of that. If you have a concern about dress, you do not need to worry about anything other than reflecting your concern about appearance or professionalism or demeanor of the students, and you can do that in the overall impression category on the rubric. And at the end of each score sheet, you'll want to make sure that you initial at the bottom. Particularly if this is your first time judging with us, you may want to take a look at the video examples on the links contained in this slide. Just gives you an idea of what kids do as they go through a role play. But these may be helpful to see what your day might look like. All right, so how do you handle the score sheets as you go through and see multiple student or groups of students during the day? My recommendation would be that as you begin your day, hang on to the first 2 to 3 score sheets until you have a feel for how the presentations are going to go and to kind of get your scoring system down a little bit. After that, as you hear students, you're going to be able to tell which students are in your top group and which students are clearly not going to be in your top group of kids. As you see those kids that are clearly not in your top 3 or 4, go ahead and hand off those score sheets to the adult assistants that are working your events. This allows them to begin bubbling those score sheets, getting the paperwork finished, and help us get you out at the end of the day a little bit quicker. I would continue to hang on to the score sheets of your top teams as you go through your day and pass along all of the others to the adult assistants. That way, at the end of the day, you're holding your top 3, 4, 5 score sheets, and you can make any adjustments to your scores that you might need at that point. But that way, you're only dealing with a few score sheets rather than the entire group. Well, at this point, you're almost finished. After you've heard all of the students that are assigned to your section, your adult assistant is going to verify your scores, count all of your score sheets, be sure that everybody is accounted for. They'll have a very quick evaluation sheet for you to fill out about your experience with us during the day, and that will conclude your day with us. And that concludes your judge orientation with us today. We cannot thank you enough for the time that you're taking to judge our students. We honestly could not put on this conference without the number of judges that commit their time to us. I want to remind you that when you arrive on site on March the 2nd, you will receive your specific event scenario and some specific training from your event director as to the details for your particular event. Again, thank you so much for taking the time to go through this orientation, and we look forward to seeing you in March.